Welcome to the Lone Zebra podcast, where I share my nitty-gritty health story and what I learned from the school of hard knocks. Things that doctors will never tell you. Hi, I'm your host, Diane Lalomia, and I'm glad you're here. We zebras need to stick together. Today on the Lone Zebra, episode 019. Today is the subject of trust. We're going to also be talking about B12. And if you're sick and tired, especially if you have fatigue, can't get out of bed, this might be the episode that helps you understand what you need. B12 deficiency is a form of anemia. Stay tuned to learn more. Trust is the key word for today, and I'm going to be sharing another story with you about my bust-a-gut. I talked about that in a previous episode, but I sported two separate ostomies, an ileostomy and a colostomy, for 5 months. In doing so, I had to trust my husband to take care of me and become dependent upon him. I also needed to trust in God to heal me, given a very extensive stay in ICU, which included intubation for a lengthy period of time. And I'll tell you more about the recovery period on a later episode, but it required trusting in myself and knowing that God loved me just the way I was, and that with my husband's love and my trust in him, my trust in my faith in God to heal me, and in trust in myself to do the things that needed to be done to make the hard road to recovery. And of course, there was trust in the doctors to put me back together again in my Humpty Dumpty surgery, as I call it. But in learning about the ostomies during this time frame, I learned a lot about nutrition because I didn't have a digestive system that worked for 5 months. So I needed to learn how to get nutrients into my body so that I didn't become deficient and go further down in my health spiral downwards. I wanted to build back up the phoenix from the ashes. So I did learn a lot, and I learned that using sublingual vitamins for my supplements made the difference because it was absorbed under the tongue and not through the digestive process and going through the gut. Transdermal patches or creams or lotions, like I use a magnesium cream now. There are other ways to get into your system by the skin because it's the largest organ. Of course, today's subject, we're talking about B12, and there are injections for B12 that your doctor can order. I always say test, don't guess. But many of us have issues. If you're dealing with any kind of methylation issue, I can guarantee you that you're probably having issues with B12. And there is an order of the B vitamins to make them the most effective. And I talk about that in some of my episodes. But today, I just want to remind you to trust yourself and to know when you're feeling a little less than normal or not so great. Maybe it's time to back off of a certain supplement for a little while. Maybe it's time to rethink what you're doing. And that's why keeping a food journal, as I call it, is really important. Because as you make changes in vitamin supplements, mineral supplements, food changes, dietary, whatever it may be, you'll be able to note it in your journal, and also how you feel, and how you feel can determine what foods work for you and what foods don't, what to change and what not to change. We're learning these things. It's kind of detective work, but trust in yourself and all the things that can help you get healed. Okay, so let's put that to test. Make sure you get a food journal if you haven't already. Let's start this year off right, noticing what works for you as an individual. Reading from the book Women of Purpose, a daily devotional for discovering a meaningful life in Christ by Sarah Daigle. Day 40. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, NIV. I donned the flowered bog boots over my wool socks, grabbed my Bible, and headed down the pasture. The morning had been filled with school and laundry. A counter of dishes towered high while we tackled math, and the 6-year-old slowly sounded out words in his Joan and the Toads story. And then, of course, there were leftovers for lunch, because no mama can cook lunch and homeschool at the same time. And the dark chocolate avocado pudding set my palate at ease, almost as much as my walk down to the lowlands set my heart aright. A girl should never wear pink jeans while slipping down a muddy bank. But today I'm determined enough to find a quiet spot that staining those jeans doesn't seem to matter. Here, where water washes the shore often enough to coat rocks and uprooted trees with things of the wider sea, here, where birds sing freely and not a soul is in sight, I find what I am looking for. Sometimes a girl needs to unclutter her world in order to unclutter her heart, because life happens, and things you never expected remain in front of your sight, blocking vision. You strain your neck to see around, but can't. You try glasses of all shades, but vision remains less than clear, and the daunting rock you've been trying to move refuses to budge. It's just there. We heave, push, and sigh, and it doesn't budge, and won't even allow us to carry it away. But God, He's just here too. The rocks say it, the birds sing it, all of nature proclaims it, that God is, and He's here, and He's not only here, but He's here for me. I may not buy freedom of soul with my own country's currency, like I buy milk and eggs and boots, but God has His own currency, and it buys me, actually gives me freedom. Faith in Him allows me to receive His care, goodness, and love right beside the rock that won't move. I'm an ambassador in a foreign country, and I don't use this country's currency for kingdom goods that only heavenly faith can buy. It's only when we forget that the soul can only be bought with heavenly currency, in fact has already been bought for us, that we lose out. We shop in the worst places when we keep scanning the aisles of the world for things that don't exist. Things that cannot be bought with our own efforts, things that only the heavenly currency of faith can bestow on our hearts. Here in the lowlands, with the unbroken stillness all around, I find again the richness of heaven. Barnacles crunch under my feet, and I know that just as nature brings to me God's unspoken beauty, so I am to bring my world God's spoken word, only made available to me by an otherworldly source. I lean over the rock, and His word speaks life, unfiltered, real, all the gifts of heaven. And I wonder why I've been trying to purchase my heart needs with earthly currency when heaven purchases so much more. Ambassadors depend on their country of origin for their needs rather than the currency of the country that they are working in. And we, when our souls are barren and dry, must ask ourselves, what currency are we using to purchase soul desires? The pink jeans are stained and the rock still remains in front of me when I so desperately want to throw it away. But I can see clearly once again. I pull myself up the slope with tight grips on weeds that could snap any minute, but my heart that was ready to snap remains still. I finally use the currency of my country of origin for the things my heart desired. No frantic shopping that wore me out as I ran here and there, just a quiet walk down to the lowlands with worn, faded bog boots and pink jeans. Just a heart ready to receive God's word that is always sure to come when we finally use the currency He's given us. I think this time I shopped at the right place. I'm satisfied. And who knows, the God who gives me vision in spite of the rock placed directly in front of me may just remove the rock as well. If not, He promises to help me scale it, fly right over it, soar above it. Today, that's all I need to know. John says, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of Him who sent me. The testimony that I have is greater than that of John. John chapter 5, verse 30 and 36, ESV. Soul in hard places, you may follow what you think, you may follow after people and what they advise you, but your soul will never truly be at rest until you follow what God says to you. John was a burning light and the people were willing to follow him for a while. But when Jesus came along, he was even better, and John faded into the background. John chapter 5, verse 35. Ladies, what is God saying to you right now in your very situation? Is He asking you to forgive when you have every right to be bitter? Is He asking you to be strong when your weakness threatens to disannul His strength? May I assure you that if God is asking you to endure, you will find more life right where you are than if you tried everything else and escaped your trial. Heavenly currency is not spent on the easy thing as much as it purchases peace that passes understanding in your hardest thing. If you're willing to follow Him, you will be rich with gifts that earthly wisdom won't buy for you. Remember to walk with heaven and use its currency for things money can't buy. Father, thank you that when I use your resources, I always walk away full. Amen. Today, we're going to be talking about vitamin B12, or cobalamin. It's a member of the B-complex family, occurring naturally in animal products, including milk and cheese. B12 needs calcium for proper assimilation, and deficiency may give rise to anemia, among other things. Although we need very little B12, our absorption is often inadequate. And vegans in particular may need to take supplements. Like vitamins B1, vitamin B12 is known as a feel-good vitamin. as it helps ensure the healthy functioning of the nervous system. Vitamin B12 is called cobalamin, and cyanocobalamin is known as the red vitamin. There is actually 3 different forms. There's hydroxycobalamin, cyanocobalamin, and methylcobalamin. The cyanocobalamin is the one that most doctors' offices have, or hospitals. It has the longest shelf life and is the cheapest. However, when it is broken down in the body, it turns into cyanide and cobalamin. So your body has to take care of that toxic cyanide in order to stay safe. I don't like that version, and I take hydroxycobalamin because it can be taken by an undermethylator or an overmethylator. Hydroxycobalamin is the one that is most often used for functional medicine doctors and nutritionists. Methylcobalamin is not shelf stable. It has to be mixed right before using because it is that fragile. And if you are an overmethylator, then using a methylated B12 could cause problems and cause you to be pretty much hyper. It gives you too much energy. Hydroxycobalamin is the best form. Okay, back to what we were reading here. Vitamin B12 is a red vitamin, so it is water soluble and found only in animal foods. Although some vegetarian foods are fortified with additional B12, it's like any other fortified or synthetic B12. It's not going to be quite the same. Vitamin B12 is the only vitamin that contains essential minerals, and our needs are fairly small. However, it's not easily to assimilate when taken orally, and it needs to be combined with calcium to be properly absorbed. I didn't realize that. I just learned something. In many cases, an injection is the best form in which to take supplemental vitamin B12, particularly when there are absorption problems. Now, absorption problems can be anyone that has had intestinal surgery, such as lap band surgery, or anything surgery that is confined to the small intestinal area. I myself, the surgeries that I've had in my life has left me very difficult to assimilate B12 because it requires the part of the digestive system to make what's known as the intrinsic factor to assimilate the B12. So what I do is I use B12 in oral drops that are sublingual, or I've also had vitamin B12 in a tablet form that is like a lozenge that dissolves under the tongue. But sublingual or under the tongue is another way, and it is for people that don't like shots, needles, etc. Might be an option for you. Sunlight, water, alcohol, estrogen, and sleeping pills all act as enemies toward vitamin B12. A time-release tablet is often recommended since B12 is not absorbed well through the stomach, and this offers the opportunity for it to be absorbed in the small intestines. Symptoms of a B12 deficiency may take more than 5 years to show up. Chronic diarrhea, intestinal parasites, and other digestive disorders can inhibit the absorption of B12, and deficiency is particularly common in the elderly. There are no reported cases of toxicity, and B12 seems to be safe at any dosage level. Many women find B12 useful for the symptoms of PMS and for menstrual problems in general. Paradoxically, diets rich in protein may require extra B12. The more B12 ingested, the lower the percentage of absorption. Learn something new every day. It's another thing I learned. So, B12 is very important, and if you are deficient in B2 riboflavin, then you will have issues with not being able to assimilate B12. It may show up as excess amounts in your bloodstream because your body isn't able to assimilate it and use it. B2 is a necessary cofactor in order to absorb and assimilate B12. And as I mentioned before, the intrinsic factor in the small intestinal area, the duodenal, jejunum, where there's lap band surgeries, those kinds of surgeries could cause issues for absorption of B12 and assimilation thereof. The elderly are often mistaken for having gait issues, imbalances, where they're not steady on their feet and fall and break their hip. And more often than not, it's due to a deficiency in B12. B12 affects the stability and the feeling of steadiness on your feet, if you will. When I started smacking my toe and getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night and doing stupid things like jamming one toe really bad, like super bad. And that was, one of those klutzy things, but I could tell that it was a sign I needed to get back into my B12 and not slack off. In Earl Mindell's Vitamin Bible on Cobalamin, a diet low in B1, which is thiamine, and high in folic acid, such as a vegetarian diet, often hides a vitamin B12 deficiency. And that is a big concern because our food is fortified with folic acid, and it could be hiding a lot of people's deficiency in B12. Properly functioning thyroid gland helps the B12 absorption. Symptoms of B12 deficiency may take more than 5 years to appear before body stores have been depleted. The B12 forms and regenerates red blood cells, thereby preventing anemia. B12 promotes growth and increased appetite in children. It increases your energy levels. It maintains a healthy nervous system. Properly utilizes fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Relieves irritability. Improves concentration, memory, and balance. Deficiency diseases are pernicious anemia and neurological disorders. B12 is not absorbed well through the stomach. It's recommended the sublingual form of the vitamin or the time-release form accompanied by sorbitol so that it can be assimilated in the small intestines. Doctors routinely give vitamin B12 injections if there's a severe indication of deficiency or extreme fatigue. This method might be the supplementation that's called for. There have been no cases reported of vitamin B12 toxicity, even on megadose regimens. Enemies of B12 are acids and alkalis, water, sunlight, alcohol, estrogen, sleeping pills. Personal advice by Earl Mindell in the book says if you're a vegetarian and have excluded eggs and dairy products from your diet, then you need B12 supplementation. If you keep regular happy hours and drink a lot, B12 is an important supplement for you. Combined with folic acid or folate, B12 can be a most effective revitalizer. Surprisingly, heavy protein consumers may also need extra amounts of this vitamin, which works synergistically with almost all other B vitamins as well as vitamins A, E, and C. Elderly people frequently have difficulty absorbing vitamin B12 and require supplementation by injection or sublingually. Women may find B12 helpful as part of a B complex during and just prior to menstruation. So these are the B vitamins that I wanted to get started with because they are the most important for both your mood and your energy levels. And for women on the oral contraceptives especially, are needing to replace or replenish the B vitamins that we've gone over. If you missed the earlier episodes, be sure to check back and stay tuned for future episodes where we'll be covering more on this kind of topic. Next time, we'll be talking about minerals and vitamins. We'll be discussing boron. You want to stay tuned because it's not boring. Boron. Today's featured music is A Good Father, performed by Joy Spring. Enjoy. All information in this podcast or on the website, blog, or in newsletters is for educational purposes only and not intended to be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or prescription. Please seek the help of a medical professional to get treatment for your particular condition. Thanks for listening to the Lone Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes at dianelalomia.substack.com. That's Diane, D-I-A-N-E, Lalomia, Lalomia.substack.com. Music on the podcast is provided by Epidemic Sound. See the show notes for featured music and artists. Don't forget to share this podcast with your family and friends, especially fellow zebras. And don't forget to rate The Lone Zebra on your favorite podcast app so others can find me. Until next time, blessings. Have a great day.